Hi, this is Steve from LZ23 Strength. Today we're talking about protein. How much protein is enough? You've probably wondered that yourself, perhaps. You've probably heard many different stories and different suggestions given by different people. Hopefully we'll give you some more food for thought to think about, because there are a lot of ideas out there. Most of them are pro-protein. There are some that think we shouldn't do too much protein, but the majority probably lean on a little more than even what is suggested. It's interesting. One report says people should have about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. So it gives an example. If a person was 165 pounds, they would consume about 60 grams of protein per day. Now, this came from the Mayo Clinic, but it was kind of dealing more with individuals who aren't real active. Some that say for more activity, they'll up the grams rather from 0.8 to 1 to 1.2 grams of protein. So I think basically the idea that I take away from this, from everything that I've watched and studied and listened to, is we're unique. We all are coming from a different place. We have different ages, male, female, size, health concerns, health issues, levels of activity and fitness. So there's not necessarily one formula that works for everybody. I believe that we have to kind of experiment and find our own way. We can take the guidelines that are suggested out there and see what works best for us at our age, for male or female, our body size. If we're trying to eat more protein, specifically, we're talking about muscle, maintaining muscle and building muscle. But what if we're overweight? Do we still want to consume a large amount of protein? Well, actually, in that case, we do, because that actually building muscle, protein can actually help us lose weight, which that's a topic for another video. But let me give you just an example to put this in perspective. Let's say there's a 25-year-old man, 6'5", 330 pounds, probably should play in the NFL if he doesn't. Compare that with a 40-year-old woman, 5'4", 150 pounds. Compare that with a 70, 75-year-old man who's 5'10", maybe 175, 180 pounds. Just those statistics alone would tell someone, well, the protein needs of each of those individuals could be completely different. And we didn't even factor in their activities. Those are just some ages and sizes of individuals. So when you put the whole picture together, we're so unique that it's going to vary with each individual. So whatever numbers we might hear, we want to kind of put it up to the test to ourselves of our situation, our eating habits, our whether we're getting older, because that's another factor that plays in. As we get older, our body doesn't utilize protein as good, doesn't use it efficiently as it did when we were younger. So we actually need more protein as we get older. And we know how significant that is, because as we get older, we lose muscle mass, also called sarcopenia, which we've talked about in other videos. And while it says that's the natural loss of muscle and strength, I kind of hate that word natural, because I don't feel it's natural to lose anything. But the studies that talk about these areas talk about adequate protein. And that's another word that I'm not totally sure I like or agree with, because adequate is basically sufficient or enough. I guess I was thinking, if your boss came to you and said, your salary is adequate, it's enough, it might not sound as good to me or to you, I would think. So the same way with protein, it feels like that's the minimal. If we're going to live optimally and have our muscle mass and strength for longevity, so you want to live longer and stronger, want our health span to be highly functional and optimal, well, then our protein intake certainly is vital to consider and to examine personally. I can't tell you what is enough for you personally because like I said, every person is different. What I can tell you is that you should make protein the star of every meal. Protein is vital for everybody. Everybody's levels could vary to a degree, but protein intake is vital. And then also resistance training to go with that is vital for everybody, male, female, every age. We all should have that considered in our routines. And when we're talking about protein, we want it to be a quality, high quality, good source. And that's going to come from lean meats, fish, poultry, eggs, some dairy, nuts, seeds. And if there's a need, which again depends on what we're trying to achieve, protein supplements can be an aid too. We have to be aware of the cost, like protein shakes, protein powders. Whey protein is a good one, but some folks might want to eat protein bars. Whatever supplemental way we might want to do it, I just have to keep in mind that it could be sugar in there, a lot of hidden calories. So if we're trying to watch our weight, we just want to be careful. We primarily would like to get our protein from whole foods. Now, I've said this, I haven't know if I've said it in a while, but I'm super picky. So even knowing this, for me, getting my protein is a little more challenging maybe than it is for normal people. Remember, I'm not normal when it comes to eating and some of my habits and ways. Just put that out there in case you might be in the same boat. But some might recommend going back to the amount. A 200-pound athlete, some might recommend 90 grams of protein or more. I'm not a doctor, not a nutritionist, not a coach, but I'm pretty confident that I feel the bottom part of protein intake should probably start at around 100 grams for many individuals. Again, there's going to be unique situations where we're below that, but throwing out there 60 or 80 or 90, well, it might not be the worst thing. Again, it might not be optimal, but again, each individual, you need to do the research and decide on your own for yourself, your body type and what you're trying to achieve. Like I work out 4 or 5 days a week. I would like to keep the muscle mass that I have. I would like to build some more. So personally, I'm probably at around 150 grams a day. Some days it's more than that. Some days, and some days probably a little less. I'm not very good at tracking it. I have a general idea, and there's many ways that you could make a list. Because a lot of us eat a lot of the same foods over and over. So once you get an idea of how much protein is in certain things, pretty easy to gauge roughly what you're doing. But we don't want to cut ourselves short, don't want to underdo it. And if we're trying to lose weight, again, we'll talk about that in another episode as far as protein and how that plays in the picture as far as helping to lose weight. One quick tip I'll give you that I've seen in different places and read is that our morning meal, your first meal upon awakening, whenever that is, whether it's 7 or 8 in the morning or 10 or 11, should be very heavily loaded with protein, probably anywhere from 30 to 50, 60 grams of protein, primarily in the morning. And that will go a long way in keeping satiety, keeping us full. And if we're full, then we won't be consuming, won't have the need for any donuts or things of that nature that are going to spike our sugar and lead us in a different direction. So one important thing, obviously, it's good to spread out our protein throughout the day if you can. I think the science has come back where some folks thought we could only digest so much at a time. So if you had 100 grams of protein by some, I don't know what kind of meal you would get 100 grams in there, but some felt that you would be wasting it, wouldn't be able to use all 100 grams. but it's not the case where he still can benefit. It's not just all wasted, even if you go over the 30 and 50, 60, whatever the case may be. But in making any of these decisions, it's coupled with the frequency of our workouts, the intensity, our goals, our health situation. Certainly, if we have some fairly significant health issues or sicknesses, we'd want to talk to a doctor regarding our protein intake, because the whole idea here is to be optimal and to be healthy for the longest time that we can. Now, as I mentioned before, some of the food products, keep this in mind for fish and seafood. Fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, those are some of the better ones because they provide a complete protein, and they're also beneficial with omega-3 fatty acids in them. I'm not a fan of any of those. If I go seafood, mine's going to be cod, grouper, maybe haddock, which I don't know, wouldn't be on the list too high, and shrimp. But again, I'm picky, and I got to pick and choose here. Everything's good if we follow through with it. And as I said, I'm not one to follow through with everything in a great way. And again, that's where you have to look at yourself and your situation and make that diet choices. What I'm good with, I love eggs. Even had some worry about the issues regarding eggs, but I eat eggs and egg whites. I do like chicken, meat, beef. I like ground beef. I'm not a steak person, and also recommended as like pork tenderloins, beef sirloins, because they have minimal saturated fat compared to some other cuts. And I'm not a fan of those things. I like ground beef for tacos. I don't eat hamburgers generally. So got to find our way through these things. Dairy products, if your stomach, sometimes folks have digestive issues, but things like Greek yogurt, cottage cheese are excellent for protein, and they have a complete protein. Folks that are vegetarians can get a lot of protein from beans, lentils, chickpeas, and these are good too because they also have a lot of fiber in them. But there are some essential amino acids that you can only get from certain foods or whole foods, animal based. Things like leucine is an important amino acid that I think you can get it in some like navy beans or things of that nature, but it's an important one, probably the most important, as far as my knowledge and what I know, amino acid, which is primarily in animal foods. But in all of these things, nuts and seeds are also a source of protein. And it's probably good to have a balanced diet and don't necessarily have to eat the same thing over and over, because how long will somebody stick with that? So having a balanced diet and a variety certainly will help us to get our protein and keep us on the path, so to speak. I did a little research just before I go. I did want to throw this out there. I don't know if we can say this is 100% accurate, but it's what I was able to find out. There's different influencers that I follow that all are very pro protein, mainly for longevity. Dr. Peter Attia, he's a very active physical guy. He does a lot of training. He's 52 years old, and what I could find out, he consumes about 150 to 180 grams of protein daily. Thomas DeLauer, another fitness influencer, and he's a pretty buff, bigger dude. He's 37 years old, 5'10", and he consumes somewhere around 200 to 225, if these are accurate. Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, she's a doctor, obviously, and she's a muscle-centric medicine believer. That's what she promotes, that our skeletal muscle is the organ of longevity, is something I've heard her say on a number of occasions. And while she's, I'm not sure of the age, I think perhaps around 40, and she's more on the petite side, She trains very hard from things I've heard in podcasts, and also tries to get at least 1 gram of protein per body weight. So again, there's a difference because she's obviously a woman, a female, and so the number might be slightly lower than some of the other individuals that I had mentioned. One other fascinating individual, we may not think of him necessarily as a fitness influencer, but he is definitely in the longevity field, is Peter Diamandis, and he's 64 years old, and we got different heights, but he's basically around my height. I'm 5'5", and they got him at 5'4" and 5'6". So give him the average, and he consumes about 150 grams daily of what I can find. So that's right around where I am, and he's as he's in the longevity field, among a million other things, very knowledgeable and interesting gentleman that he's tried to work on muscle building, and that's kind of newer to him in general, from what I gather. And 150 grams daily, and he trains hard, and he's put on, I believe, the last podcast I saw him, I think he put on like 10 pounds of muscle in a year or two. So it definitely has its impact. Again, we all have to decide. So when I say how much protein is enough, I can't give you a number. There's ranges. The main thing is I tell you to do your own research and make your decision based on your health, your age, female, male, how old you are, because as we age, we need more protein. And one of the greatest things that's going to help us to have a healthy lifespan and health span, longevity, is to have muscle and strength. So protein is vital to help us through that. So we've talked recently about creatine. Protein is another important factor, and as I hear new information, I'll try to pass that along, but encourage you to continue to exert yourself, elevate your health, evolve in mind and body. Please hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, leave comments maybe on your diet, your exercise routine, maybe some research that you've found. We'll try to share it with others, and we'll look forward to talking to you in the next video. Take care.